Welcome in this video. I am Dr. Vinita Bhadoria, Associate Professor of English in Government College, Behror. This video is useful for the students of BA Part 1 and it belongs to Paper 2, Prose and Fiction. In this video, I am going to discuss and analyze the story A Cup of Tea written by Katherine Mansfield. In the previous video, I have discussed with you life and works and achievements of Katherine Mansfield. A Cup of Tea. A Cup of Tea is a short story written by Katherine Mansfield. It was first published in the Storyteller magazine in May 1922. Later, it appeared in The Dove's Nest and Other Stories in 1923. Her short stories first appeared in Melbourne in 1907, but literary fame came to her in London after the publication of a collection of short stories called In a German Pension. The story was written on 11th January back in the early 1922, which was first published in the famous Storyteller magazine and later appeared in Mansfield's short story collection, The Dove's Nest and Other Stories. This is just as I told you. The story associates with the deplorable condition of New Zealand at the time when it used to be a British colony. The trends of class distinction were at its peak, a noticeable issue which needed to be brought forward influenced Mansfield to pen it down. This story remarkably presents a crystal clear image of class distinction and one's mad fondness towards materialism. It's just the same as the doll's house and the garden party. As a matter of fact, that these stories also reflect upon the same issue of class distinction. Mansfield also tried to reflect upon the noble act of philanthropy and how people fancy this act to be the cause of ascension for their moral values among their social circle. Rosemary Fell is the main character in the story. She explored the inner recesses of human psyche. She is a socially poised, rich married woman with a devoted and loving husband who has a great lifestyle. She is well dressed and well off with all the luxuries she desires for. Her interest is mainly of reading books, always indulged and above all greatly inspired by the characters and their adventurous lives which she come across in the stories. Her inspirational interest can be judged from the decision she takes when she interacts with the poor soul called Miss Smith by taking her home with the mere thought of it being an adventure for her, recalling the stories of Dostoevsky. Apart from this, suggestion and insecurity can be sensed in her character. Short stories of Mansfield dramatize human emotions, creating situations which are at once tender and brittle. Rosemary, the protagonist, is caught up in a fantasy of helping others, but it doesn't go as planned. The little box that Rosemary sees in the antique shop, by telling the reader that Rosemary must have it, Mansfield may be highlighting the importance of material things to Rosemary. Beside the story holds class consciousness and materialism as its pivot point, stunningly well characterized and magnificently portrayed against its plain title. This story remarkably presents a crystal clear image of class distinction and one's mad fondness towards materialism. A story revolves around the character of a wealthy woman named Rosemary. She spends her day shopping and spending money lavishly, She met with a poor woman of her age named Miss Smith, who asked for the price of a cup of tea. Rosemary took her home and tried to help her, however, her intentions are not that kind. She wants to gain fame from this act of kindness. In the end, she wants to get rid of Mrs. Smith as her husband praises her for being beautiful. Mansfield uses a foil to convey the theme of jealousy and insecurities that highlight the weakness of Rosemary Fell and how she struggles to make herself surpass the power of wealth she has over the lower class society. The plot may be viewed from two angles: Rosemary's intentions of showing the bright and better side of her character, and the darker side when jealousy is aroused in her, that all her good desires come to nothing. As a result, she appears small and petty as anybody else. The story holds class consciousness and materialism. It represents a crystal clear image of class distinction and one's mad fondness towards materialism. Rosemary asked the girl to come home with her for tea, finding it an opportunity of adventure and experience, just like she read in books and stories of Dostoevsky. She wanted to show the girl that rich people do possess mercy. She feels bad for the girl and wants to make her feel good as well as herself because she wants to experience this and do just like they do in the books and on stage. The title of the story is appropriate because a cup of tea symbolizes Rosemary's somewhat shallow concern for the welfare of the poor young lady, Mrs. Smith, she meets in the street. Mansfield accomplishes this in part through her use of the third person limited point of view. The narrator is an outside voice that relates the thoughts, feelings, and observations of just one character. Initially, Rosemary wants to give Mrs. Smith the gift of tea and sympathy, even though Mrs. Smith only asks for some money to buy herself a cup of tea. Because Rosemary sees this a great opportunity to show off just how incredibly caring she is. Rosemary Fell is a the story consists some autobiographical elements such as the character Rosemary Fell is a fictional reconstruction of Mansfield's wealthy first cousin. The story is mainly written in the modernist mode without a set structure. Many shifts and changes in the narrative can be observed. The setting of the story takes place in the early 1900s back in Britain. The story begins with the shopping scenario of Rosemary stopping at florist's shop and afterwards visiting the antique shop till darkness strikes. It's where she meets poor Mrs. Smith outside the shop. The literary quality derives in form of the skillful manner in which the Mansfield has created a fluid narrative voice which combines finely by engaging with her subject. The story takes a start in the third person narrative with many observable shifts afterwards, establishing a conversational style. The plain and ordinary title of the story has the tendency to gravitate readers towards it, as one can wonder what a title so simple can hold inside it. The charm of the story exceeds the imagination of the reader as one comes across the contents of the story finely sketched against the plain title of the story. The title of the story is relatable to the story as the point when a poor girl from the story asks a rich woman to pay her the price of a cup of tea. The main themes of the story is class distinction and materialism. This story pictures the differential behavior of the upper class towards the lower class through the character of Rosemary and Miss Smith. Her attitude and behavior gives quite a clear image of the mentality possessed by discriminating elites. Materialism is rigidly followed by the upper class. The more they have, the more they want, and they don't want anything ordinary. They want the best of all, the extraordinary, unaffordable by the commons. Their want for more never dies. The velvet box in the story is the set example, which symbolizes materialism, while the cup of tea symbolizes the equal need and requirement of the rich and the poor. This is all in this video. Thank you very much.